Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soul fire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soul fire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and Tips, Tricks, and Triumphs Tuesday. So if this is your first time listening, I'm a hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner, Reiki master, and a life coach. But I like to call myself a change adventure navigator because I love guiding clients through obstacles and adversity to find their path, purpose, and peace. So today, before we get started, I'd like to talk for a couple minutes about creating a mindset of abundance. I had a client this week who had a very non-abundant mindset and a not enough mindset. And so it was on my mind after going through with them how to create a more abundant mindset. So I have some tips for how to do that. And one is to be aware of how powerful your thoughts are. And then do things that help you create more abundant thoughts. Like have an abundance affirmation. Like I create, see, and receive and give abundance in all things, or something like that, something that's just easy for you to remember and you can repeat it. So practice gratitude. When you're in a state of gratitude, it helps you see things as more abundant. So don't limit yourself. Believe anything is possible. So pick your words and self-talk very carefully. Sometimes we don't realize when we're setting up a lack or non-abundant mindset by the things we say, like, I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough energy, or I don't have enough. We're setting up that non-abundant mindset. So instead say, I have the right amount of time, or I have all the time I need, or some things we just tend to think of as there not being enough of, but really there is. So pursue your passions and live purposefully. And things will feel more abundant if you are pursuing and are in alignment with the right things in your life. And start each day with an intention. And that will help also with things like feeling a lack of time. If you have an intention, you're more likely to feel like there is more time. So practice self-care. And the more you take care of yourself, the more abundance you're going to see in everything around you. Just because you're going to be, like fill up your own cup first, you're just going to be able to give and receive more if you take good care of yourself. And so try those things, and I think you'll have a little bit more abundant mindset. So I'm anxious to get to the show today because I have wanted to know more about the Akashic Records myself. And our guest today, Lisa Barnett, is the founder of Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom. She's an Akashic teacher, consultant, healer, and author of The Infinite Wisdom of the Akashic Records, and From Questioning to Knowing, 73 Prayers to Transform Your Life. With more than 25 years as a spiritual teacher, Lisa teaches students all around the world to access soul guidance. She incorporates information from your soul's library, the Akashic Record, with energetic healing to help you break through blocks, clear pain, fear, and find karma to create the life your heart and soul desire. So I am excited to introduce Lisa now. Hi.
Hi, Kate. Nice to be here with you.
Glad to have you here. And as I said, it's something that I would like to know more about. So to start out with, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and, what led you to this path?
Oh, absolutely. So, for me, it's been a lifelong journey. And that journey literally started when I was 3 years old. And so at that moment when I can remember being 3, I actually realized I was trapped in a body. I literally could remember being in the etheric realm, conversing with my friends up there, not having to use a lot of words. And here I was at 3 trying to explain something to my mother. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't believe I've done it again. So yeah, it was quite a little trigger. And I started to study when I was really in my teens, 13, 14 years old. I was like, okay, what is all these memories about? What's going on here? My parents were basically agnostic. We didn't go to any kind of church. And so I had actually gotten my parents to take me to church when I was about 8 because I figured maybe somebody there would know something. But I started reading the spiritual information that was coming out. I was living in California, and it was the late 60s, early 70s. It was, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was bringing transcendental meditation back to bringing it to the West from the East. Lots of interesting books out in the world or coming out in the world. So I literally started to read and study kind of spirituality, looking for information on reincarnation. I kept on in university. I was studying philosophy. And so it started as just a conscious awareness. And then many years later, I actually went through my whole, my own kind of dark night of the soul. 2 of my best friends died, and I decided that I didn't want to really be much of a part of this world anymore. So I was going to go have fun and party. Again, a lot of partying going on in the 70s and 80s here in California. And so, I really just kind of went down that rabbit hole until I ended up so sick that I kind of had to pull myself back out and remember what was my soul path. What did I really come to do? And so I became a healer. My realization when I was young was that I was actually a healer. And so I studied healing for many, many years. I had a healing center. I would do sessions, healings, intuitive readings for clients. And every once in a while, I get this kind of big booming voice. I get this like, wow information that was not just about kind of what was going on in their life and their energy field in this time, but really all these past life information, what they came to do, the soul contracts they had with other people, the karmic patterns they want to heal and release so they could learn and grow as a soul. Anyway, it was very wow. And it took me a while to actually figure out where that information was coming from. And when I finally did, I realized I had access to this Akashic record field that I had been taught by my healing teacher was off limits to us, off limits to humans, but they were talking to me and they were answering me. And so I realized it actually wasn't. It had been when I asked the record keepers. I said, so what's all this about? You can't go into the Akashic records. And they said, well, we had pulled the energy away from the planet during the Dark Ages around 1000 AD because people misused it for their own gain. And they said, but it's time to bring it back. We're at a kind of a new energy in history, and it's time for people to access their own soul wisdom. And it's really everyone's birthright. And so kind of with all of that information, they said, please help us to bring the energy and information back to humanity. And we'll give you kind of sacred access prayers to help you teach this information. And they did. And I said, yes. And that has been going on for many years now.
Okay. So can you tell us just what actually are the Akashic Records?
Sure. So the Akashic Records are the recording of your soul's journey throughout all time, space continuum. So if you can imagine that you as a divine soul at some point individuate from source and go on a journey, and everything, every place you live, every life you have, every world or plane or dimension, and there are many that we experience, all of these lifetimes and lives in between are all recorded in your own personal Akashic record library. So I like to say, if you could imagine you have a whole library just about you, and you also have your very own librarians. And these are the beautiful, pure, divine source beings of light that we refer to as the Akashic Record Keepers, or I sometimes call them the Akashic Masters. There is actually many in your library that are here to be in service to you, that are here to help us. Each of us have our own librarians and our own library. So they're here to help us understand really who we are in a much bigger way and what we came to do or be.
So how did you first learn about this? You mentioned your teachers.
Right.
Who were they, and how did you learn?
Well, I studied with a woman here in California for almost 6 years, and she said you can go up to the gates of the Akashic Records, but you can't go in. And so that was the information she had been taught. And so that's what I thought when I would do an energy healing on a client. I would go up to the gates of their Akashic Records. I could kind of see these etheric beings, and I would say, please, can my client have some energy to fill themselves up now that I've made space in their field? Now we've done some healing and releasing of old energies. And I would see the energy kind of come down. It would stream down. It would look like sparkles or books or information, wisdom, whatever. And I'd be like, great, thank you. And off we go. And then I started to hear really a big booming voice. So I would be doing a reading for somebody and a healing for them. And I would get like more this booming voice that would give me this big information. but I didn't know who they were because I was told you could go up to the gates of the records, but you couldn't go in. So I was never expecting, that I was actually entering these people's Akashic record. But what they told me later on is that when I would come together with a high vibrational client, that we could energetically, because of the vibration that I hold, because my path is to bring this information back to humanity, we could move into this Akashic dimension, which is part of the quantum field of source energy. And I could then access all of this expansive information for my clients. So it was really quite beautiful to be able to, start to work with them, these beings of light, as my teachers, and say, why did my teacher think I couldn't go in the records? What happened? And they would give me this history, like, we pulled the energy away back in the dark ages, and now we're just bringing it back, right? And so, so I have spent many, many, many years just having these big, deep conversations with these beings of light, with these record keepers, and say, explain,
Okay.
And they do.
So what does it mean when we talk about a person's soul path or purpose? And how do we know we're on that path?
Right. So the way the record keepers explain it is that your purpose, often people are like, what's my purpose? And I have tons of clients who, what's my purpose? And the record keepers always say, it's not one thing. If we had like one purpose, like you're supposed to go get a job at, this company, we would be, of course, bored out of our minds. We are really infinite souls. We are very wise. We have had, most of us, over 400 lifetimes here on Earth alone, not to mention all the other realms or dimensions. And so we know a lot. And of course, as wise souls, we would be very bored. So your purpose is to actualize your soul's plan. And what that means is, before you come into a body, before each lifetime, you say, this time I'm going to Earth, and this time I'm going to pick these kind of parents. I want to understand and heal or learn from some of these karmic patterns. Often karma has been seen through history as like a punishment. And karma is not a punishment. It's not because you've been a bad person or that you're a bad soul. Again, I'll have clients who will come to me and say, I must be really bad because I've had this really hard life. But the truth is that we want to learn, because we are these ancient, infinite, wise souls. We want to learn about these emotions. We want to be able to have experiences, learn, and be able to move from trauma or challenge into compassion and love and forgiveness and really a higher consciousness. We want to share these gifts with other people. We want to be teachers. And even if that teacher, being a teacher, means I'm sharing with my spouse or my children or maybe my friends or my family, we really come to become more conscious. And as a soul, your basic soul purpose is to learn and grow and to live out your soul plan, which is complicated because most of us write soul contracts with about 25 to 50 other people. So it's a lot of contracts. Many of them are to support each other, but many of them are also to learn and grow. So I would say maybe that soul contract has some karma attached, right? I wanted to get together with this person so I could work through my feelings of jealousy, or I want to understand how our relationship is maybe blocking me or holding me back, or another relationship may be supporting you and helping you to move forward. So we write like I say, 25 or 50 of these soul contracts. And that's a big part of our purpose. And what we come to do is to support other people as well as have these relationships to learn and grow.
So it sounds like our purpose can change on an ongoing basis, or maybe from life to life. Is that true?
Yes. So each lifetime we may say, these are the talents I want to bring in this lifetime. And we might pick 2 or 4 or even 6 kind of gifts and talents and skills maybe that we've honed in other lifetimes. And we want to use those. And so, of course, those become part of our purpose. So I'm kind of a weird example, but because my sole purpose is to help bring the Akashic Records back to humanity. That's what the record keepers asked me all those years ago. And most people's are maybe a little less specific like that. But because we're at such, again, a powerful time in history where we are awakening in greater numbers than we have in thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And even though part of, what's happening is a lot of the trauma in the world is pushing us to awaken. And the earth herself, our dear Mother Earth, is actually a conscious, sentient being. And she is also awakening. So if you imagine the planet we're living on is waking up, that's going to keep pushing us to awaken. And so what happens is all of the situations and relationships and things that are out of alignment for humanity and Earth's the highest and best good, those are going to come up to be witnessed, right? So more of the climate change is showing up to be seen and to help other people to say, okay, we now have these huge floods and, more hurricanes than we've ever had and more drought than we've ever had. And villages and cities washing away. And maybe it's time to do something about this. Maybe
maybe our relationship with Mother Earth has some problems.
Right? So it pushes us often to a point where we can't ignore it anymore. And that's what will start to push us really to heal, change our attitude towards the planet, start to really, as everybody around the world, we're very global, right? We're not just stuck in a small village where we don't talk to somebody, who's 10 miles away, except for once every 2 months when we go to market, right? It's just been hundreds of years. The whole world is transformed. So if we don't transform it now, of course, we'll be in trouble. But I completely and utterly believe, and according to the record keepers, we are on a timeline to heal our planet, to awaken in a much greater global sort of sense, right? To move out of a lot of our old, some of our selfishness into really becoming a much more global community and supporting everyone around the world so that everyone has food and water, clean air, right? So it's a huge piece of awakening. Yeah.
So how do past lives affect, like a soul's present life?
Right. So we often write our soul plan, right? So before we come into a body, we write a soul plan, and we write that plan based on other lifetimes we've lived. And so part of that basis is gifts and talents that we've learned in other lives. So we can say, oh, remember all those different lifetimes where I was a healer. I want to bring my healer gifts to the world. And for someone else, it might be, oh, remember all those lifetimes where I invented great things for the world or for the community. I want to go back and bring those gifts and talents as an inventor back to humanity. And someone else will, we've been engineers. We've engineered these great cathedrals around the world. somehow engineered the Great Pyramids and, all sorts of things. There's lots of people who are coming who are like, let's create things that are really useful and helpful for humanity now. So we really base a lot of our purpose on other lifetimes where we have effectively use these gifts and talents. So for someone like yourself and myself, we have a lot of gifts as communicators. So we want to bring our gifts of communication back to humanity, whether we're have a podcast or we're speaking on podcasts or we're writing books or we're speaking on stages. It's very much about being that beautiful communicator that you really truly are. Many times they would have called us sages, right? We would have been those wise women. We would have been the sage. And that's very much about communicating the higher energies and consciousness and like a lot of the beauty and gifts of the world, as well as often the sage can merge with the healer. So I know there's hundreds of thousands and millions of people on the planet who have come to help awaken, the other 6 million or whatever people on the planet, right? So
yeah, a lot more than 6 million.
Well, 6 billion.
So,
right, billions and billions, yeah.
So what are soul contracts or vows, and how do they affect us in our lives?
Well, I spoke a little bit about the soul contracts, right? So we write, 25 or 50 of them, and many of them show up in our life with ease. We also do write many soul contracts to have significant partners because we're really such a kind of global world now. And most of us don't stay put, right? It's not like we stay in the village that we were born in all of it's like just a couple hundred years ago, we might have written, maybe 2 or 3 soul contracts for significant partners because we'd pretty much meet them unless, their life may have been short-lived with, health, illness, whatever, different challenges. But so we might have had more than one soul contract, but now we have, 12 or more because we're such a global world. So I think that's helpful for a lot of people to know, because I have, again, many clients who come to me and they're like, I've been married twice, but neither of them worked out. I learned a lot, right? So those marriages that had the karma attached. I learned a lot about forgiveness. I worked through a lot of my old triggers or pain or trauma. I've had people have said I've even become, a therapist because of the traumatic childhood I had. And now I'm ready for a partnership that I'm really supported. Do I have a soul contract for that? And it's actually not unusual, even in your 50s, 60s, and sometimes even in your 70s, to still have some soul contracts that you wrote, because you might have written a dozen, and maybe you've had 2 or 3 significant partnerships or marriages. And there's some of those people may have married off or even crossed over, but there's often still a couple relationships that are really here to support us, and we're here to support those other people. So soul contracts, and when we find those people, I find that we often kind of know them, right? That experience of like, oh, there you are. Where have you been? If you've ever experienced something like that, it's always lovely. But vows are a little different. So many times in a life, we will take a vow, such as if maybe we've been a monk or a nun or a priest, and we've joined some religious group. We take a vow. Often we've taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, especially if we were part of the Christian or Catholic churches in the last 1,000 or so years. There was quite a bit. And these vows of poverty, because this is really in alignment with what you were saying earlier. When we find that we are kind of stuck and in not able to move more fully into an abundant life where it's challenging to have enough money, what I find is often we've taken vows of poverty, and we don't feel right charging for our gifts, because when we took those vows, and often in more than one life, so if we've been on a spiritual path in this life, the likelihood that you've been on a spiritual path in at least a dozen or more other lifetimes is very great. Again, you've lived 400, 500, 600 lifetimes. So, it makes sense that we could have, 10 or 20 vows of poverty from different spiritual lives or religious lives. So these can hold us back because we have this belief that we should not charge for our gifts. But we're not living in a monastery anymore. No one is feeding, us or clothing us or putting a roof over our head, right? And so that may have been fitting back when we lived in a monastery, but it doesn't work in our world now. So clearing and releasing a lot of these old vows, whether they're something like poverty. I've seen a lot of vows that people have also taken around money, but on the opposite end. So if you imagine you had a past life where you were very, very wealthy and someone came along and killed you for your money, while you're kind of bleeding to death, you may have said, I vow never to be rich because it got me killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we take on these kind of vows. So you might have vows of poverty, vows of I don't want to have money, vows of,
Yeah. So it is very much like hanging on to your past. It works very much the same if you're hanging on to your past life.
Right. And your past life vows, right? And even in the same way, sometimes we may have had a soul contract with someone in a past life, and say they died, maybe, whatever, people died of all sorts of different things ways back. I mean, sometimes it was from an accident and or whatever, drowning or illness or the plague, right? All these different reasons that we died young. And so sometimes when we die young, the other person says, I vow to love you forever. And so we make this vow, and it carries on. These vows of foreverness can carry from one lifetime to another. And so if you meet that person in this life, you might be happily married, but they show up and you're like, oh my gosh, there's the true love of my life, because you vowed to love them forever. And so I'm a big fan of clearing old past life vows and never. My poor husband, I've been now married for 30 years. And when we were first married, my husband would be like, I'll love you forever. And I'm like, please don't. Just this life is good. And it's really honestly brilliant, because if you really pay attention to marriage vows, they say until death do us part.
Yes.
That's actually written into our marriage vows now. So vowing forever is a very long time. So I always say thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. So what happens if you break a contract or a vow?
Oh, good question. Well, the interesting thing with contracts and vows, vows are not meant to live forever either. So some of the spiritual ones where we vowed kind of forever to not take money for our spiritual gifts, they should be broken. They're ready to be broken. So we can do that, of course, because in the Akashic Records, which is the quantum field, there is no time and space. And so when I do healing through the quantum field of the Akashic Records for my clients, it's very simple to clear these old past life vows and even contracts that are stuck outside of time, like where I had a contract and maybe my spouse died and I was traumatized, and then I added a vow on top of that contract. And now I'm kind of locked in that kind of energy. So clearing them is actually very beneficial because it's important for us to live this life now. This has its own whole plan and its own contracts and vows. So releasing these vows is great. Even the contracts we've written in this life are not all forever, right? So we sometimes will write a very short-lived contract, such as if you imagine that maybe you had a very short relationship with somebody, maybe you were together for a month or two, and you didn't really get along and you just broke up and went on your way, and then you realized that you were pregnant and you really didn't want to marry that person or have that baby with them, but you really want to have the baby. And so that soul contract could be to just have that experience, to have the baby that you actually have the contract with, where the contract with the gentleman was really just more about getting pregnant. Really kind of similar as if you went and had in vitro and you actually paid for the sperm, right? Because I want to have the children. Sometimes we do it. We make that contract short-lived with a person. So they can be very short-lived. Sometimes we do have other kinds of contracts about being parents together. And sometimes when the children grow up, it's, not uncommon to see people get divorced after 20 or 25 years, kind of when their children have grown and they've really gone in different directions. And so often clients will come to me again with that kind of question, is like, is it okay? Is our contract complete? Is there lessons to learn? And again, we can go into our Akashic Records and ask all of that kind of information. Is there a lesson yet to learn? Has this contract been completed? Is it in the family's highest and best good to stay together, or is it in their highest and best good to move on? And so there is a greater depth often that we can get. And sometimes we can look at some past lives maybe we had with this person. Is there anything to be healed or cleared? Have I learned all the lessons with this soul that we've come to learn about and to share? And we can really look at all of those aspects kind of before we just walk away.
So breaking a contract isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Correct. And occasionally I will have people who have come to me, they say they've been married for 30 years. They maybe even have been kind of unhappy for the last 5 or 10, and they feel like they should stick it out because they've been together a long time and they had these kids, but they're going, say, down a spiritual path, or they want to start a new business, or they want to move someplace different, and their significant partner is not interested. And they'll really kind of come to me with at odds and be like, what happens if I break this contract? What happens if I get divorced? And the record keepers will actually say sometimes that contract was complete 10 years ago when your children turned 21. So you've really stayed longer than you ever, contracted to stay.
Okay. So what is most challenging about the work that you do?
Oh, that's a fascinating question. I think some of my biggest challenges are that I would just love to heal everybody in a few minutes. I want to heal all of my clients in the hour we have, and sometimes we just have to realize that we're ancient and complex. And of course, many of my clients are over 40 or 50, and they've had challenging lives. And so it can be a process. Sometimes people will say, can we just clear all the karma and all the contracts and just be done? And I say, it kind of sounds like a great idea, but what would actually happen would be we would have nothing keeping us here, and we might just leave the earth. And that's not really what we want, right? We are not wanting to leave. But if we become completely unanchored with no soul plan or soul purpose left, what's to keep us in the body, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand those bigger pictures, that we come to work through the challenges, to be able to really go from these challenging situations, to be able to open our heart further, to be able to feel more compassionate and forgiving, and to little step by step kind of shift and grow. And then we can look back and be like, wow, that's great. I've made, I had a, really hard childhood, and now here I am, doing whatever that might be that you're doing. And that's the learning, and that's the growth, and that really is the soul accomplishment that the soul is looking for when we come here to earth.
So what is the greatest benefit or reward that you personally get from doing this work?
Well, being able to be the conduit to this information, being able to heal people, whether it's in an hour, because I can do a heck of a lot in an hour, and often that's like, people are like, wow, I feel completely different. All of that weight of the world is off my shoulders. I'm ready to go out and write my book or start that new business or whatever it might be for them. And that's always so exciting. And also for me to teach this work. So of course, many, many years ago, the record keepers gave me what I call the 5-step wisdom prayer system to simply access your Akashic records. So they've given me vibrational keys in the form of sacred prayers. And so instead of having to meditate for hours on end, for years on end, we use a vibrational key to open the records and to move into that energy vibration. And so it's very exciting for me to have taught thousands and thousands of people around the world. I have right now I'm teaching I teach a 6-session or 7-session workshop, and I've got over 100 people online in my workshop. So it's very fun because people really start to get it. They realize I teach healing tools and just so much information that it's very transformational. And then some of them will go on to become certified Akashic Record readers, consultants, and healers. And so to be able to offer a path to start your own business is always very exciting for me, because I know many, many of my clients say, I'd like to, have a spiritual job. I'd like to have a spiritual business. I'm not sure what to do. Do I, what do I study? How do I do this? And so the record keeper said, we can teach you. We can teach you to read the records for other people and to actually start a business. So that is beautiful. I have a dozen or more teachers who teach my work, and a couple of dozen of certified consultants who are out there doing Akashic record reading and healing sessions for people. So it's been just a very beautiful, and I feel very blessed to say, fulfilling path, bringing the records out to the humanity.
Great. So this is a little bit of an off topic question. And considering what you do, it might seem a little strange, but I've been asking all my guests for a while. So what has surprised you most about life so far?
Wow. Well, honestly, the thing that really surprised me the most, so, I mean, just the whole process of kind of waking up as a 3-year-old and having these gifts was a surprise. But the really next biggest surprise, when my son was 11 months old, I found out that I was pregnant with twins. And so I had 3 babies under a year and a half. And that was a humongous surprise for me because I never really considered myself like the motherly type. So, so I could go into my Akashic Records and say, really? Really? So when you're really shocked and surprised, often to be able to go in your records and say, kind of, what the heck? It was funny because I felt almost like, how could this happen to me? Right? I'm on this other path, and all of a sudden I have these 3 babies, and then my nephew moved in with us. So I literally went from 1 to 4 virtually overnight. And the record keepers, of course, they always laugh because they're just pure love. And they'd say, you made soul contracts with these 4 souls, and they had to figure out how to get into your life. They were like, you didn't make it easy, because I had my twins when I was 40.
Oh, so my goodness.
I was not having kids at 20 or 20 something. It was, Connor was 38, and almost 40 when the girls were born and my nephew moved in. So they were like, you didn't make it easy for them, but they did it.
Yeah, I understand how surprised you were then.
Right. And then to be able to go, well, you have these soul contracts with all these souls was really beautiful. What that did for me is it moved me out of a place of feeling like a victim, like swamp, right? Like I didn't plan this, to, oh, yes, you did. And so I really was able to really almost move from feeling like a victim and totally overwhelmed with these 3 babies and a teenager to stepping into that and owning that and saying, oh, okay, my plan, I'll step up.
Okay. So we're almost at the end of our time. So if you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
Oh, well, it really always truly is that you are an ancient and infinite soul. And you have so much wisdom and really intuition when we can start to trust in it. Your intuition, your Akashic Record keepers, your higher self will validate much of what you have inklings about. And so really let yourself drop into your heart space and listen to your soul and start to follow your own soul guidance.
Okay, good. So if people want to get in touch, find out more, sign up for classes, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
You can find everything on my website at akashicknowing.com. You will see classes, readings, consultations. I have a home study program. I have guided meditations. I have 2 books. So all of that is on akashickknowing.com. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Great. So that sounds easy to find. If you happen to forget it, you can go to the radio website. That's soulfireradio.com. Click on guests and scroll down to Lisa's name, and the website is listed there. So
thank you.
So thank you for being here today and talking about this. I know there was a lot of interest from people about it. So
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kate. I appreciate you having me on and getting to share the infinite wisdom of the Akashic Records with your community. So thank you so much.
So I'd like to thank the audience for being here today. And we have another great show planned for next week. Next week, my guest will be Tracy Warren. And Tracy, she's the owner of InSpark Co-working in Seattle. And she's a social media marketing expert, and She's an author and a speaker and a community builder. So she just wrote a book about creating, how to create community. So be sure to tune in next week. That's 3 p.m. Tuesday, the 28th, and we'll hear all about creating community. So thanks again, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.